What happens when your favourite prog rock artist of all time goes up against your favourite prog rock band? Find out next. Hello and welcome back to the Album Review channel. Today we look at the conundrum that has been happening for some time now, so it is time to review the latest example. Just released is Genesis Revisited Live, Seconds Out and More by Steve Hackett, and was a gig I watched earlier this year. Steve has a tight-knit, settled band that has been unchanged for a good number of years now. Bassists tend to drop in and out of the unit, but other than a change of drummer a couple of years ago, it's a very settled band. When Genesis released Seconds Out in 1977, they had moved on from the departure of Peter Gabriel in 1973, and at that time were also a settled band. Events were to change shortly after, however, but that's another story. So is there a difference? Is one better than the other? While Steve includes some additional solo material as a warm-up for the big event, the content we're going to look at is like for like, and that's what we're comparing. Starting off with the album cover, both essentially share exactly the same cover with just slightly different wordings on each. I call this a tie. Score is Genesis 0, Hackett 0. Sound quality next. Seconds Out was reissued with a new stereo and 5.1 surround sound mix completed by Nick Davis and released as part of the Genesis Live 1973 to 2007 box set in September 2009. That appears to be the last update to the music. Let me know in the comments below if you know differently. Steve's version encompasses all the latest technology and may just shade the decision overall, but I still call this a tie. The score's Genesis 0, Hackett 0. Lead singer. Now, I have great admiration for Nad Sylvan. He is a classy singer with a distinctive voice and one I like a lot. His recent album, The Regal Bastard, is a great example of his vocal talents. However, he is up against one of the voices of the 70s, 80s and 90s, and whilst some of his solo material was questionable in my opinion, in Phil Collins you have what was the voice of Genesis for all those years after 73. He nailed the vocals and made the band sound more accessible to others. In this respect, there's a clear winner in Phil Collins, so it's Genesis 1, Hackett 0. Lead guitar. As Hackett plays on both albums, this is ultimately a tie again. His styles may have changed slightly over the years, differing techniques come and go, but Hackett is Hackett is Hackett. Genesis 1, Hackett 0. Rhythm guitar, bass guitar. In this section there have been a number of very fine distinguished bass players that have graced Steve's band over the years. Dick Cadbury, Chaz Cronk, John Wetton, Nick Beggs, Lee Pomeroy and Roy Stolt, to name just a few. Current incumbent is Jonas Reingold, who is a multi-talented guitarist most known for his work with the Flower Kings since 1999 and has worked with Steve since 2018. His work is to a deceptively high standard due to his laid-back looking persona, but he is a guitarist of some standing in my opinion. I enjoy his work and both bass and rhythm suit the band just brilliantly. Mike Rutherford, on the other hand, was a founding member of Genesis with Peter, Tony and Anthony Phillips and stayed with the band right through to the infamous Calling All Stations album. His bass guitar work is fine, but I've always felt that his work was limited. Stepping up to fill Steve's shoes was always going to be a step too far for him, and on later live work he wisely left the lead guitar role to Daryl Sturmer, except on the compositions he wrote in the band's latter catalogue. Now, whilst I have the utmost respect for Mike, I do feel that Jonas takes the edge here, and that squares up the contest. Genesis 1, Hackett 1. Let's look at the keyboards now, and this is probably the most interesting area of the comparison for me. The imperious Tony Banks takes on the professor-like Roger King. Now, Banks has set the standards in Genesis since he helped to form the band back in the day and is regarded as one of the leading lights in the field of prog rock keyboardists. He is also a fine songwriter, as well as being a competent guitar player when required. There is an air of calm about Tony, one that nothing seems to ruffle his feathers when push comes to shove. Certainly in the top 3 of most people's list of best prog keyboard players. Roger King has been with Steve officially since 2001, in some way or another since the 1990s. Like Banks, he remains calm and unruffled, and is a model professional. Whether he adds writing to the band is not determined, but we do know that he is particularly proficient in orchestration and arrangements. Like for like on keyboards, they are inseparable, as King matches all the virtuosity Banks can deliver. Both can perform the classic Genesis pieces impeccably. Firth of Fifth leaps to mind. King's advantage is the development technology to assist his sound, but it still needs to be performed. I rate King as highly as any prog keyboard player around, excluding Emerson and Wakeman. He is that good, so based on that, in the keyboard section it's a tie. The score remains Genesis 1, Hackett 1. In the percussion section, this is a rather difficult one to judge, as it was Peter Gabriel who held the role for the band in this area, but as we know, he'd already left before the actual Seconds Out recordings. However, he did play on many of the originals included in this set list, and as such, he's going to go head-to-head against Rob Townsend. Gabriel was well known for his flute on so many of the early tracks, but apart from some additional tambourine and bass drum contributions, I don't remember him doing much else. If this is incorrect, please leave some details in the comment section below as to what else he played. Rob Townsend has been with Steve since 2001 and plays saxophone, flute, keyboards, percussion, bass pedals and helps with the vocals. He's worked with some of the musical greats in his time: Sam Rivers, Eddie Henderson, Bill Bruford, Django Bates, Tim Garland, Lawrence Cottle and James Taylor. His versatility within the band adds such an extra dimension that cannot be underplayed, and as such wins this largely uneven contest against a Gabriel hands down. Genesis 1, Hackett 2. It's all to play for in this final category, and we have Chester Thompson up against Craig Blundell. Chester has been part of the Genesis touring band on the main part of the tour, taking over after some of the early concerts featured Bill Bruford. Thompson's claim to fame is the 2 years he spent with Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention in the group's 2-drummer setup. Zappa's music is incredibly hard to play, and pre-tour practice involved around 40 hours a week, solid practice for 6 to 8 weeks prior to any tour. Thompson left in '75 after Zappa cancelled one of the tours, and he returned home to the US to join Weather Report, albeit not wanting to do. Leaving them after a year, he had joined Santana, only to be approached by Phil Collins to be the band's touring drummer, as Phil was so impressed with his work with Zappa. Craig Blundell is a multi-talented drummer who started off in the prog group Frost in 2009, spending 10 years with the band. In between, he has played and studied to expand his expertise, and is in high demand to guest appear on albums and tours. He's been with Hackett since 2019 and offers vocal backups within the band. Whilst undoubtedly a top performer, Blundell has not quite reached the heights of Chester, in my opinion, and as such Thompson is preferred in this category. This makes the final score Genesis 2, Hackett 2. Now, in many respects, I am pleased that this has ended up as a tie, as both band and artist are my absolute favourites. From the mid-90s, Genesis ploughed a rather tortuous path, with first Collins leaving, Ray Wilson coming on board, and a final album that was panned by the critics. For me, a little more time for Wilson to settle in, and who knows what might have developed. There was a comeback tour in 2007, and a final Last Domino tour during 21-22 has seen the band finally call time. Hackett is continuing to power on with new album after new album in all styles and genres, as well as keeping up a near constant touring mantra. Whilst the actual albums stand proud, side by side one another, with nothing to separate them, it is the work ethic of Hackett that for me tips the balance, making Genesis Revisited Live, Seconds Out and More, the overall pick in the straight up battle. Now, not everybody's going to agree, so let me know what your assessments would be in the comments below. I look forward to your thoughts and will enjoy reading them. If you have enjoyed the content, then give it a like and share on your social media feeds. This tells YouTube that more people would enjoy the content and makes them offer it to others. Please consider subscribing to the channel. It means so much, and at the time of recording, 300 subscribers is not too far away. I thank all who are already subscribed. On screen now is a link to another video that has proved popular recently, and I know it's one that you will enjoy. I'll see you across there.